When the bank manager looked at me, his face went pale in a way I'd never seen on another human being. Not shocked, not confused, afraid. His hands started to shake as he held my grandfather's old passbook. The same one my mother had thrown into the trash the night before, saying it was useless and should have stayed buried with him. I remember thinking maybe I should have left it there, but it was already too late. The bank was quiet that morning. Too quiet. Just the soft hum of the air conditioner and the slow ticking of a clock on the wall. I sat in the chair across from his desk, my purse resting on my knees, my heart steady but heavy. I wasn't expecting anything special. I only came because something in me couldn't let that passbook go. My grandfather, Elijah Carter, never owned much, but he guarded that little book like it held his whole life inside it. Welcome to Auntie Rose Narrates. Before today's story of betrayal and self-discovery, please subscribe and hit like to help these stories be heard. Drop your city or country in the comments. It always warms my heart. Now let's begin. The manager cleared his throat and stood up. He walked to the door and turned the lock. Then he leaned toward his assistant and whispered words I will never forget. "Lock the front doors," he said, "and call the police, now." I felt a cold wave move through my chest, slow and deep. I hadn't done anything wrong. I knew that. Still, my fingers curled tight around the strap of my purse. I thought about my mother, Ruth, standing in the kitchen yesterday, dropping that passbook into the trash like it was nothing more than old paper. I could still hear her voice. "Baby, that thing don't mean a thing," she said. "Your granddaddy's gone. Let the past rest." But the past doesn't always rest when you tell it to. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it watches. And sometimes it follows you straight into a quiet bank office on a Tuesday morning. The manager finally sat back down, his voice low and careful. He looked at me like I had placed something dangerous on his desk instead of a worn-out passbook with faded ink and brittle pages. "Miss Carter," he said softly, "where exactly did you get this?" I swallowed and answered the truth. And in that moment, I realized my family had never really known my grandfather at all. Not the way we thought we did. Some secrets don't die with the people who keep them. Some secrets stay alive, waiting for the right hands to open the book. Before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand where I come from. Not just the place, but the people, the habits, the silences we learn to live with. I grew up believing my family was simple, even predictable. We were an African-American family living on the south side of Columbus, Ohio. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic. Just working people trying to hold things together the best way we knew. My name is Denise Carter. I'm the middle child, which already tells you a lot. Old enough to remember things people pretend didn't happen, young enough to be told to stay quiet about them. I learned early how to listen more than I spoke, how to read the room, how to feel when something was wrong, even when nobody said it out loud. My mother, Ruth Carter, raised us mostly on her own. She was a strong woman, the kind who didn't ask for help because she didn't trust it to come. She worked long hours at a nursing home, double shifts when she could get them. Her feet always hurt. Her hands were always tired. But she kept the lights on and food on the table, and she reminded us of that often. Not in a cruel way, just in a tired one. She believed in letting go of the past, or at least that's what she said. Ain't no use digging up old bones, she would tell us whenever questions got too close to things she didn't want to explain. She liked clean counters, quiet evenings, and order. Anything that disrupted that made her uneasy. My older sister, Yvonne, took after her in many ways. She was practical, focused. She liked clear answers and solid ground. She married young, moved to a suburb outside the city, and built a life that looked stable from the outside. 2 kids, a neat house, a schedule taped to the fridge, She didn't like surprises, then there was me. I stayed closer to home. I worked at a local community center, helping seniors with paperwork, benefits, and daily tasks. I had patience for stories. Long ones, messy ones. I didn't rush people when they talked, even if what they said circled back on itself. Maybe that's why I was always closest to my grandfather, Dot. My grandfather's name was Elijah Carter. Everyone called him Papa Eli. He lived with us on and off when I was growing up, especially after my grandmother passed. He was quiet but not distant, the kind of man who spoke when he had something worth saying. His voice was low and steady, and when he laughed, it came from deep in his chest like it surprised him. He spent most mornings sitting at the small kitchen table with a cup of coffee, staring out the window like he was watching a movie only he could see. Sometimes I would sit across from him before school or work, and we wouldn't say much. But it didn't feel empty. It felt settled. Papa Eli had a few things he cared deeply about. His old watch, his Sunday hat, and that passbook. The passbook was always with him. Not in his pocket, but nearby, tucked into a drawer, slid between pages of an old Bible, wrapped in a cloth and placed carefully in a tin box. I noticed it when I was young, but I didn't understand its importance. I just knew he checked it now and then, running his fingers over the cover like he was counting memories dealt once. When I was about 12, I asked him what it was. He smiled, slow and gentle, and said, "That's just something for later." For later when? I asked. He looked at me for a long moment and said, "For when the time's right." That was all he ever said about it, Dot. My mother didn't like the passbook. I could tell. Whenever she cleaned or rearranged things, she avoided it like it made her uncomfortable. Once, I saw her pick it up, flip through it quickly, then put it back down with a sigh. She never asked Papa Eli about it. She never mentioned it to us. It was like an unspoken agreement to let it sit where it was and not give it a name, Papa. Eli didn't talk much about his past either. I knew he grew up in Mississippi. I knew he came north during the later years of the Great Migration, like many Black families searching for work and safety. I knew he worked hard, factories, construction, long hours. But the details stayed thin like a photograph that had faded over time. Sometimes, late at night, I would hear him coughing in his room, a deep rattling sound that worried me. I would bring him water, and he would thank me like I'd given him something precious. He never complained. Not once. When he passed away, it was quiet. Early morning. Natural causes, the doctor said. He was in his late 80s. We gathered in the living room, the three of us standing there, unsure of what to do next. My mother cried, but softly. My sister held her hand. I stood a little apart, feeling like the ground had shifted under my feet. The funeral was simple. Church hymns, folded programs, neighbors offering hugs and food we barely touched. People talked about what a good man he was. How kind, how steady. I listened, nodding, holding those words close because I believed them. After the burial, life moved forward the way it always does. Too fast, my mother started cleaning. That's what she did when she needed control. She went through drawers, closets, old boxes, sorting, tossing, deciding what stayed and what went. That's when the passbook came back into my life. I found it in the kitchen trash late one evening, sitting on top of coffee grounds and empty cartons. It was wrapped in the same cloth Papa Eli used, now stained and damp. I stared at it for a long time before touching it. It felt wrong to see it there, like seeing something sacred in the wrong place. Dot. When I picked it up, my mother sighed. "Denise, don't start," she said without looking at me. "Why would you throw this away?" I asked quietly. She shrugged. "It's old. Ain't nothing in it. Your granddaddy held on to things that didn't matter anymore." I didn't argue. Not then, but I didn't put it back either. I rinsed it carefully, dried it, and slipped it into my bag. I didn't know why. I just knew I couldn't leave it there. The next day, on my lunch break, I went to the bank listed on the cover. I expected nothing. Maybe a closed account, maybe a polite explanation and a quick goodbye. I thought it would bring closure. Instead, it opened a door. But before that door opened, before the locked doors and shaking hands, my life was ordinary, quiet, predictable. I was a daughter trying to keep peace, a sister trying not to rock the boat, a granddaughter holding on to something she didn't fully understand. Didn't know then that my family's calm surface was built on layers of silence, or that the man who taught me patience and kindness had carried a story heavy enough to change how I saw everything. I only knew that morning. As I walked into the bank, I was still the same Denise Carter I had always been, and I had no idea how much that was about to change. After the bank manager asked me where I got the passbook, he didn't say anything else for a long moment. He just stared at it, then at me, then back at it again, like he was trying to place something he hadn't seen in decades. I sat there quietly, my hands folded in my lap, feeling the weight of that silence grow heavier by the second. It wasn't loud or sharp. It was the kind of silence that presses on your chest. "I'll need to verify some records," he finally said. His voice was careful, measured. "This may take some time." I nodded. I didn't ask questions. I didn't know what to ask. I told myself to stay calm, the same way Papa Eli always did when things felt uncertain. But inside, something had already started to shift. A small, uneasy feeling settled in my stomach, like I had stepped onto ground that looked solid but wasn't. When I left the bank that day, I didn't tell my mother where I had been. I said I ran errands. She nodded, distracted, already planning dinner. My sister called that evening, talking about school schedules and grocery prices. And I listened, answering when needed, holding the truth back like a fragile thing. That night, I lay awake thinking about the passbook, about Papa Eli's hands, about the way he said, "For when the time's right." I wondered if this was what he meant, or if I had misunderstood him all along. The next morning, the bank called. The manager asked me to come back in. He said it was important. His tone was polite, but underneath it, I could hear something else. Tension, maybe even concern. I told my supervisor I needed time off and headed straight there, my heart beating a little faster with every mile. This time, when I walked into the bank, the atmosphere felt different. People glanced at me longer than they had before. The manager met me at the door instead of waiting behind his desk. He led me into a small office in the back, away from the lobby. "We've located some records connected to your grandfather," he said once we were seated. "But there are complications." That word stayed with me. Complications. It sounded heavy, like a warning. He explained that Papa Eli had opened the account decades ago, back when banks didn't always welcome black men with open arms. He told me there were gaps in the records, old policies, merged institutions, lost files. Each sentence added another layer of uncertainty. "But the account is real," I said quietly. He nodded. "Yes, it's real." That should have brought relief. Instead, it brought more questions. Why had Papa Eli never said anything? Why had he held on to that passbook so tightly? Why had my mother been so quick to dismiss it? When I got home, I found my mother in the kitchen again. Same place, same light coming through the window. I told her about the bank. Not everything, just enough she froze. Her hand stopped moving over the sink. Slowly, she turned to look at me. "You went to the bank?" she asked. "Yes," I said. I thought I should. Her jaw tightened. "And now what?" "They said the account is real," I replied. They're still looking into it. For a moment, I thought she might say something else. Ask questions. Show curiosity. Instead, she shook her head. "Denise, you don't know what you're stirring up," she said. "Some things are better left alone." That hurt more than I expected. Not because she disagreed, but because of the fear in her voice. I had never heard her sound like that before my sister came over that weekend. I told her to. She listened, arms crossed, her face serious. "So you're saying Papa had money we didn't know about?" She asked. "I don't know how much," I said, "or even if it's still there, but the account exists." She sighed. "This feels messy." That word again, messy. Like Papa Eli's life had been something inconvenient from that point on. Small tensions began to grow. Nothing loud. Nothing dramatic. Just little shifts. My mother started watching me more closely. My sister asked questions that felt more like doubts. I started feeling like I was carrying something fragile through a room full of sharp edges. The bank called again a few days later. Then again the week after that. Each time, they needed more information. Old documents, death certificates, proof of relation. I helped them gather what I could. Birth records, old letters, things Papa Eli had kept in boxes under his bed. As I went through those boxes, I learned things I never knew. Addresses, names of people I'd never heard mentioned. Small details that hinted at a bigger story. One evening, I found a letter with my grandfather's handwriting on it. Not addressed to anyone, just words on a page. He wrote about saving money for the family. He wrote about trust, about patience, about waiting for the right moment. I showed it to my mother. She barely glanced at it before handing it back. "That was his business," she said. Her distance stung. I started to feel like I was standing between two worlds. One that wanted answers, and one that wanted quiet. The stress began to seep into everyday life. Dinner conversations grew shorter. Phone calls ended sooner. My sister started mentioning lawyers and fairness. My mother avoided the topic altogether. Then came the misunderstanding. One afternoon, my sister showed up unannounced. She had spoken to someone, a friend of a friend who knew about money things. She told me I needed to be careful, that handling this wrong could cause problems. Legal problems, family problems. "Are you planning to keep whatever this is to yourself?" She asked. The question hit me hard. "No," I said. "Why would you think that?" She shrugged. "You're the one dealing with the bank. You're the one they're talking to." I realized then how easily trust can crack. Not with betrayal, but with uncertainty, with silence, with assumptions. That night, I cried quietly in my room. Not from fear, from sadness, because something gentle had started to unravel. The bank manager eventually told me they needed more time, more digging. He warned me that what they found might raise questions about ownership, about history, about things that weren't simple. I told my family this. My mother shook her head again. My sister looked worried. "I don't like this," my mother said. "I don't like any of it." Neither did I, but I couldn't stop. I kept thinking about Papa Eli, about how calm he always was, about how he trusted me to sit with him in silence. I felt like I owed him something. At least the truth. As weeks passed, the tension didn't explode. It pressed inward. Conversations felt careful. Emotions stayed just under the surface. I started dreaming about my grandfather, sitting at the table, watching me without speaking. Then one afternoon, the bank manager called and asked me to come in immediately. His voice was different this time, lower, urgent. "There's something you need to see," he said. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking slightly, knowing this was no longer about a forgotten passbook. And as I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, I realized something important. Whatever the bank had found, it was going to change how my family saw my grandfather forever, and maybe how we saw each other too. When I walked into the bank that afternoon, I could feel it before anyone spoke. The air felt heavier, like the building itself was holding its breath. The same manager met me at the door, but this time he didn't offer a polite smile. He nodded once and led me straight to the private office in the back. The door closed behind us with a soft click that sounded louder than it should have. He sat across from me and placed a thin folder on the desk. My grandfather's passbook rested on top of it, open now, its pages carefully protected in a clear sleeve. I stared at it, feeling like I was looking at something alive. Double quotes, Miss Carter. He said quietly, "What I'm about to share with you may be difficult to hear." I didn't answer. I just nodded. He took a breath. "Your grandfather's account isn't just old. It's historic." That word made my stomach tighten. He explained slowly, choosing each word with care. Decades ago, Papa Eli had opened multiple accounts under special trust arrangements. Not common ones. Accounts connected to land compensation, withheld wages, and a legal settlement that had never been fully distributed. Money that had been set aside, frozen in time, growing quietly while the world moved on. He was part of a group that challenged an institution, the manager said. A case that was buried for years. Buried. That word again. I listened as he spoke, my hands resting still in my lap. Papa Eli, the quiet man at the kitchen table, the one who fixed loose chair legs and hummed old hymns. I tried to match that image with the man the manager was describing. A man who fought, a man who waited. The total amount, he continued, is significant. He slid a paper toward me. I didn't look at it right away. I felt my chest tighten, not from excitement, but from something closer to grief. Because suddenly I understood why Papa Eli had been so careful, why he had waited, why he had trusted no one with this but time. This money, the manager said, was never meant for just one person. I finally looked down. The number didn't feel real. It felt like a mistake, something that belonged to someone else's life, not mine. "There's more," he said. He told me the account required a specific condition to be released. A family acknowledgement, a recognition of what had been taken, and who it was meant to restore. Papa Eli had written instructions, letters, statements of intent, and then came the part that cracked something open inside me. "There's a second name attached to the account," the manager said gently. "Someone who attempted to access it years ago." I felt my throat go dry. "Who?" He hesitated, then said it. "My mother?" He nodded. I sat back in my chair, the room tilting slightly. My ears rang. My thoughts slowed, like they were moving through water. Years ago, my mother had gone to this same bank. She had brought the passbook. She had asked questions. She had been told it wasn't ready, that it required conditions she didn't want to meet. She declined to proceed, the manager said, and she asked us not to contact her again. I stared at him, disbelief settling into something colder. "She knew," I whispered. He nodded again. I don't remember standing up, but suddenly I was. My legs felt weak. My heart pounded, not with anger, but with a deep, aching disappointment all those years. All that silence, I thanked the manager. I don't remember how. I just remember walking out of the bank into the afternoon sun, feeling like the ground beneath me wasn't steady anymore. When I got home, my mother was sitting at the kitchen table, the same place Papa Eli used to sit. She looked up when I walked in, and something in my face must have told her everything. "You went back to the bank?" she said. "Yes," I replied. She didn't ask what they said. She didn't need to. "You knew," I said softly. "You knew about the account?" Her shoulders sagged, just a little, like she'd been holding something up for too long. "I didn't want it," she said. "That's not what I asked," I replied. She looked at me then. Really looked at me. Her eyes were tired. "Older than I remembered. I knew it existed," she said. "I didn't know everything." "But you knew enough to go there," I said. "You knew enough to throw it away." Her voice shook. "I didn't want that past, Denise. I didn't want what came with it." That's when it hit me. Not as anger, as understanding. And hurt. Papa Eli hadn't just been protecting money. He had been protecting a story. One that scared my mother. One she didn't want to carry. "You didn't trust us," I said quietly. She shook her head. "I didn't trust what it would do to us." My sister arrived later that evening. I told her everything. The account. The amount. Our mother's visit to the bank years ago. She was silent for a long time. "So all this time," she said finally, "you knew and said nothing." My mother looked down, the room filled with something thick and heavy. Not yelling, not accusations, just the weight of years spent avoiding truth. "I was trying to protect you," my mother said. My sister laughed once, short and hollow. "From what?" "From knowing who our grandfather was." That was the breaking point. Not the money, not the secrecy. The realization that we had all been living around a truth instead of inside it. That night, I went to my room and opened the letter I had found in Papa Eli's box. I read it again, slowly. This isn't about money. It's about being seen. It's about not letting what was taken stay forgotten. I understood then why he waited. Why he chose silence over conflict. Why he trusted me without ever saying my name. The next day, the bank called again. They were ready to move forward, but they needed one thing. A family decision. I sat at the kitchen table alone. The same table where so many quiet moments had passed. Knowing that what we chose next would decide more than an account. It would decide whether we stayed divided by fear or finally told the truth out loud. And as I picked up the phone, I knew the hardest part of this story still hadn't been told. After the bank told me they were ready to move forward, I didn't answer right away. I sat at the kitchen table with the phone resting in my hand, listening to the soft hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock above the sink. Those sounds had always been there, steady and familiar, but now they felt louder, like reminders that time keeps going whether you're ready or not. I told the bank manager I needed a little time. He understood. He said he'd wait for my call. That evening, I asked my mother and my sister to sit with me. No phones, no distractions. Just us, the way it used to be when Papa Eli was still alive and we'd sit quietly, sharing space more than words. My mother hesitated at first, wiping her hands on a dish towel even though the sink was empty. My sister crossed her arms, then slowly let them fall to her sides. We sat for a long moment. No one spoke. I could feel the tension moving between us, not sharp, not angry, just tired. Like something that had been carried too long and was finally asking to be put down. "I don't want us to fight," I said softly. "I don't want this to tear us apart." My mother nodded, her eyes fixed on the table. My sister looked at me, her expression guarded but open. "I want to understand," I continued. "All of it. Why you went to the bank, Mom. Why you didn't tell us. Why you were so quick to throw that passbook away." My mother closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were wet, but she didn't cry. She rarely did. "I was scared," she said. "Not of the money, of what came with it." She told us about her visit to the bank years ago. How young she was then. How overwhelmed. How they explained the conditions, the history, the reason the money existed at all. How it wasn't just about savings, but about injustice. About harm that had never been fully repaired. They wanted acknowledgement, she said. They wanted names, records, statements. They wanted the past spoken out loud. Her voice trembled. I grew up watching my daddy carry that weight, watching doors close on him, watching him swallow things he shouldn't have had to. I didn't want that for my daughters. My sister frowned. But you didn't let us choose. My mother nodded slowly. No, I didn't. That admission sat between us like a fragile thing. Not an excuse, just the truth. I thought if I ignored it, it would go away, my mother said. I thought if I kept us focused on the present, we'd be safe. I reached across the table and placed my hand over hers. Her skin felt warm, familiar. You were trying to protect us, I said. But Papa Eli was trying to prepare us. That night, something softened. Not everything, but enough. Over the next few days, we talked more than we had in years. Not just about the account, but about Papa Eli, about things we remembered, about things we hadn't known. My sister shared stories I'd never heard. My mother spoke about her childhood, about leaving Mississippi, about the fear that followed her north, even when things were supposed to be better. We cried quietly. We laughed a little too. Mostly we listened, when we finally agreed to move forward. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about honoring the reason it existed, about acknowledging the truth Papa Eli had lived with so patiently. We went to the bank together. Sitting there as a family felt different this time. The manager explained everything again, slower, clearer. The documents, the acknowledgements, the process. We signed papers with steady hands. We spoke names that had been buried too long. We told a story that had waited decades to be heard. When it was done, there was no applause, no celebration. Just a quiet sense of completion. The money was distributed the way Papa Eli had intended, shared, structured, set aside not just for us, but for future generations. Education funds, community contributions, pieces of a legacy that reached beyond our last name. Walking out of the bank that day, my mother took a deep breath. Your daddy would have wanted it this way, she said. I nodded. I think he trusted us to figure it out. Life didn't change overnight. We still argued sometimes. We still had misunderstandings. But something fundamental had shifted. The silence that once sat between us had loosened its grip. My mother stopped cleaning with such urgency. My sister stopped worrying about control. And I stopped feeling like I had to carry everything alone. One afternoon, weeks later, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, the sunlight falling just right across the surface. I placed Papa Eli's passbook in front of me, not as a secret anymore, just as a reminder. I ran my fingers over the worn cover and whispered, "Thank you." I thought that was the end of it. The truth told. The family healed. The story complete. But closure, I learned, doesn't always arrive all at once. A few days later, the bank manager called me again. His tone was calm, but thoughtful. "There's one more thing," he said. "Something we found while reviewing the final records." My heart slowed, not racing this time, but listening. "It doesn't change what's already been done," he continued. "But it might change how you see what your grandfather was planning." I thanked him and hung up, staring at the wall across from me, whatever this was. I knew it wasn't about money. It was about intention. And as I picked up my keys and prepared to head back to the bank one last time, I realized this story still had one more quiet turn left in it. The last time I went to the bank, I went alone. Not because my family didn't care anymore, but because this part felt personal. Like a conversation meant just for me and the man who had started all of this without ever saying much at all. The bank manager greeted me with a small smile and handed me a single envelope. Inside was a copy of a letter my grandfather had written years ago, never mailed, never filed. Just saved, waiting. I sat there and read it slowly. In the letter, Papa Eli wrote about patience. About how some things take time, not because people are slow, but because hearts need space to grow. He wrote that he didn't want his legacy to be loud. He wanted it to be steady, something that would bring his family closer, not pull them apart. He ended the letter with a line that stayed with me. "If you're reading this, it means you listened when others turned away." That's all I ever hoped for. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it back into the envelope. When I walked out of the bank, the sky was overcast but bright in its own way. The kind of day that doesn't rush you down at home. I placed the passbook and the letter together in a small box and set it on the shelf in the living room. Not hidden, not displayed, just present. Part of us now doubt my mother stood beside me and rested her hand on my shoulder. My sister joined us. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. Life slowly settled into something gentler. Not perfect, just honest. We talked more. We listened better. We let the past have its place without letting it control the present, sometimes. I still sit at the kitchen table in the early morning, a cup of coffee in my hands, watching the light come in through the window. In those quiet moments, I feel Papa Eli close. Not as a secret keeper, but as a guide. I learned that day that legacy isn't just what you leave behind. It's how you prepare the people you love to face the truth when it finally arrives. It's trusting that they'll choose understanding over fear. Some things are buried because they hurt. Others are buried because they matter too much to be rushed. When the time is right, they find their way back to the surface, and when they do, if you listen carefully, they don't come to break you, they come to bring you home.